You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 371 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan in the heart of enemy territory, downtown Toronto, alongside Brandon Pillar up in Collingwood. And you might be able to see us. And if not, don't be shy. We're now on YouTube, so you can go subscribe there. Locked On Senators, just type it in, and it's just the beginning of a new adventure for the show. But today we've got a lot to discuss coming off a weekend where players filed for arbitration, restricted free agents, and that included Victor Mete. What kind of contract would the Senators pick up from waivers, let's remember, be looking for coming off a $735,000 deal? I'll get Pilsy's take on that. And then what better way to kick off a new era of Locked On Senators than with our favorite segment. Rav joins us for a SensCentral citizen, and he brings the energy, no doubt. So we've got all that, plus a roundup from the World Junior Summer Showcase and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day. Today is Monday, August 2nd, and Pilsy, it's a new beginning, but it feels just as normal here talking Sens hockey.
Oh yeah, we're finally on YouTube. We got the video podcast going. I'm excited. It's like you said, it's a whole new world, but really very similar. Like nothing changes too much, except now, Ross, you can't be crawling out of bed in your house coat. You actually have to comb your hair, and you got a nice new shirt on. It's like we're really pros here. We're not doing this in our underwear anymore.
I had to check for tags before we hit record on this one, no doubt. And I put gel in my hair before the pod, and that felt very weird because I guess I can admit it now. I've probably done, 200 of these episodes in my house coat?
At least, yeah, definitely. That was your work uniform, yeah, for
sure.
Oh,
man, but this is great. This is exciting stuff, and we're happy to be here and really appreciate everyone who's already subscribed on the YouTube channel. We dropped our Brian Boucher interview there, which was one for the ages, Pilsy. I had to go back and get that Ovi story a week after he was on the pod because that was just iconic. I mean, Brian Boucher is just an incredible storyteller. The way we kind of slanted the interview to Ottawa and you know, the Tyler Boucher connection, his time playing against the Sens. But this guy is just a hockey guy through and through, and he brought a ton to the show. So he is circled as a guy we got to get back on once the season gets going.
Oh, 100%. And not only is he a hockey guy through and through, but this guy's a broadcaster. Like, you can tell he's a storyteller, right? Like, it's not like he's just some ex-NHL player and he's just working on his public speaking or anything. He knows how to tell a good story. And what I like about that Ovi story is very relatable. Like maybe dad's listening, like you had a tough day at work and then you got to go home and you have a 3-year-old daughter or a 3-year-old son and you got to entertain a bunch of people at a barbecue or something and you got to put a smile on. Like imagine doing that after getting scored on 6 times. And like you said, probably one of the greatest goals ever scored. And you got to put a smile on your face for your neighbor, Rick, who wants to ask you, how in the world did you let Ovi beat you on that one? And you just got to smile and nod your way through. So shout out Brian Boucher, the hockey player, and the dad. That's an impressive move.
And he can take solace in the fact that he wasn't still in Philly when that story happened. You know how the fans can get on their goalies there. He had a little bit more anonymity in Arizona, but I watched that goal highlight again. And if you don't know the one we're talking about, Ovechkin comes down the right wing, cuts to the middle, puts the puck through the defenseman's feet as he trips over his stick. I believe it's Paul Mara, the defenseman. And then as he's falling to the ice, backhand corkscrew over his head with the puck and puts it right past a sprawled out Brian Boucher. Yeah, just the way he goes from an Ovi story to a Joe Thornton story, all surrounding Tyler Boucher. So this is a guy who's grown up around the game, no question. And we'll touch on his World Junior Summer Showcase later on in the show. We'll also have notes on Levi Marilainen, Jake Sanderson, and the rise of the K train. Yes, Tyler Clevin continues to make his presence felt. Does he make it onto Corey Pronman's projected Team USA roster? We'll have all that for you later, but Pillsy, I teased it off the top. It's the RFA arbitration filing weekend. So no contracts have been signed just yet, but Elliot Friedman tweets out the list of 17 different players that filed. Now, I'm only going to mention the most notable ones like Zach Aston Reese, Andrew Kopp in Winnipeg. You got Vince Dunn in Seattle, Dante Fabro in Nashville. Adam Pelech is a big one, especially considering what kind of money has been thrown out to shut down defensemen throughout this offseason. Adam Pelech's coming off a hell of a year with the New York Islanders. You've got Neil Pionk, UC Saros, Jacob Vrana, and Victor Mete of the Ottawa Senators. Mete is younger than almost everybody on this list because he made the Habs as a 19-year-old. What kind of contract do you think he'll be asking for heading into arbitration, knowing, Pillsy, that the player always shoots high and the team always shoots extra low, and knowing they'll somewhere meet in the middle?
Yeah, this is a funny arbitration because unlike those other guys you mentioned, like, those guys are key parts of their teams. Like, especially you look at UC Saros, he's going to be the number one goalie in Nashville. He's going to get a massive arbitration. You look at Zach Aston Reese, a guy that's due for a big payday. Jacob Vrana, someone who's going to be one of the top players in the Red Wings roster this year. And then you got Victor Mete, someone who was picked up off of waivers for nothing. And his contract already was only $735,000. It was his first deal after his entry level. And I'm not really sure how much up or down can happen here. Like, what's Victor Mete? Like you said, the player's going to shoot high. What's the highest you think he goes? A million?
1.3 would be the highest.
That's almost double, Ross. You're telling me
Cody
he's going to shoot for double?
Do you not remember when Cody Ceci asked for $5 million?
What was his contract before that? Was that off his entry level?
No, it was the one after, because you don't get arbitration rights right after entry level. And that's why Victor Mete is such a curious case, because he's only 22 years old, but he's already finished his entry level and then a 1-year contract afterwards. So I think from his standpoint, it's a little bit different, but he's not going to get 1.3. Hell, I don't think he's even going to get $1 million. The thing is, he played nicely down the stretch, especially those last 4 games when Thomas Chabot was hurt. He certainly stepped up, and he played a top 4 role. It was him and Brandstrom. They each got moves on the power play, and that, I think, helped Mete get comfortable. But that being said, we're still looking at a guy who's counting stats, had 1 goal and 1 assist in 14 games. So when it comes out in the wash, like, how much can this guy realistically expect to make?
I don't know. Like, honestly, like, I'm thinking maybe he could bump up to 800, 900,000 maybe. But, and the thing is too, Ross, unfortunately for Mete, he's kind of lost all his leverage. Like, they just brought in 2 more left shot defensemen that are bigger. And we know DJ Smith wants bigger, stronger defensemen rather than smaller puck moving guys. And you've already got Eric Brandstrom, who fills that role to a much higher profile than Victor Mete would. So, like, when Mete is making all his arguments, like, yeah, he's not going to look at the point totals, but he's going to look at, you know, I'm good at breaking the puck out. I played well shorthanded. I was one of the top defensemen on this team at the end of the year. The Ottawa Senators are just going to say, well, yeah, that was then. Thomas Chabot was injured. That would bump you down the lineup. Michael Del Zotto's probably going to take your place playing minutes. Nick Holden is another guy that's going to replace you, and he brings an element that we don't have and we need, someone who can play the left and the right side. So where's Victor Mete's leverage? Like, what is he going to be basing his argument off of to get a better contract? He doesn't have a lot to stand on. Like, the Senators could even be like, we don't care about this arbitration at all. We might not even play you, let alone be worried to keep you. Like, we might sign and trade you right away. Like, I just, it sucks for a guy like Victor Mete, because I thought this situation was going to work out well when he got picked up, but that's no longer the case. And I'd be surprised if he gets anywhere near $1 million. Like, I'm really thinking it's going to be 850, 900,000 max.
For me, a nice contract would be if he could get 2 years at 900,000. That way, you're banking on him to have a little bit of progression this next year, where you can play him every game in the top 6, maybe even get a spot duty in the second power play unit. Even when everybody's healthy, it'll be tough. And then when Sanderson's up here, near impossible that's where the team has to look. But I think he'd be a good guy to when Sanderson comes in next year. And, Delzado's on a 2-year contract, though, so let's not forget that. I think that will play a role in how Mete's situation unfolds. But there's also a spot on the right side, Josh Brown's kind of locking down that third pair. So maybe there isn't that sort of crossfire. But we know how the coach feels about Josh Brown, and I think he'll get opportunity over Victor Mete. However, those two made a pretty decent pair down the stretch, Pills?
Yeah, they did, and I think they both complemented each other well. Like, we always talk about this, the yin and yang defenseman pair. That was a perfect example of Mete was maybe struggling in other spots, and Josh Brown was struggling in other spots. But when you got together and they kind of covered each other's weaknesses, it worked out. Now, I'm not really considering Josh Brown as a guy in the top 6, Ross. Like, I have Nick Holden taking his spot on the right side on that bottom pair.
Okay, so you have Delzado and Holden as your third pair right now?
Yep.
Okay, so then just for completeness sake, so you've got Shabbat Zaitsev then. So does this considered a failure? I mean, the offseason far from over, but what happened to going to get Shabbat's partner? David Savard off the market. Zadorov, he's moved on. There's been so much movement of guys on the back end who could fill that role. And Ottawa just had their hands in their pockets.
I don't consider it a failure because I don't think this is the year they're really pushing to go all in. I think, right, like, look at the moves they made. They're really just trying to implement that, all right, let's see what we got. Like, that's a big reason why they shipped Dadonov out, I think, is to give an extra spot to someone internally. They didn't replace Dadonov on the forward roster. Like, they didn't get anyone up front. Like, the only forwards they got are AHL depth guys. And I don't know what direction they're going to head there. And I'm assuming they're not done, but I also don't think they're going to make a big splash this offseason unless something comes by that they just can't resist. Like, it's something too good, which is what they did with Dadonov, right? Like, at the time, that was a good contract. Everyone around the league was like, wow, nice move by the Sens. Dadonov, 3 years, only $5 million, get some scoring talent in there. That's a nice move. So unless something comes along like that, I don't think they're going to make a big splash here yet.
There are a couple names that were rumored to be interest of Ottawa, and they haven't been on the move yet. Sean Monahan and Ryan Strome come to mind right away, but I don't think those are really the guys to go for. Meanwhile, on defense, which is where we got into this conversation about adding, but I just have those two together since Melnick came out and blatantly said we need a veteran top 6 center and a top 4 defenseman. And all the top 4 defensemen seem gone to me. Oh, before we get to SensCentral Citizen Pilsy, we got to talk about how quick our shows age. We had Krejci in the name of last episode on Friday, and not even an hour after we post it, it's announced that he's going to go back home to the Czech Republic. Can't fault the guy for that, and not like he was really going to come to Ottawa anyways. I'm glad the Sens showed interest because he is the type of player that they do need drastically right now. But, hey, good for him, and stick taps, hell of a career for the former Gatineau Olympique, David Krejci. We rattled it off. This guy in the last 10 years is tied for 4th in playoff points. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, David Krejci, you got to tip your hat to him. What an amazing NHL career. But Ross, I'm still shocked. Like, he's coming off an amazing season. He could have cashed in big time one more time. Or, like we said, if he didn't want to go for the money, $70 million in the bank, I think he's doing all right. Then he could have easily joined a cup contending team and been a major deciding factor in the playoffs. So the fact that he decided to go back home to the Czech Republic really shocked me. But also, you got to look, like, with Corona going on and stuff like that, you take a look at your life a little differently. And he says, you know what? Now's a good time to just get settled, to stop hustling, to stop working and grinding and traveling and all that stuff. I'm just going to stay in my home country, travel around Czech Republic, and, spend time with my family. So you can't fault him for that one bit. So congrats to David Krejci, and he's probably going to be the best player in that league. No,
whoa, Jágr still plays.
I think David Krejci has a little more juice in the tank than Jágr. No offense. So, I mean, what Jágr's doing, he is amazing, but I think Krejci will have him outskilled for the time being.
Yeah, 15 years younger, but former line mates. Hey, they brought Jágr to Boston to play with Krejci.
Wow, that seems like forever ago.
Right? I think that was the 2013 season, right? When they made the Cup final and had that dramatic loss where Chicago was about to go back for another game, and then they tied it and then won it in the span of maybe a minute and 20 seconds at the end of the game. That was absolutely wild. But I'm still kind of, shocked by the irony of all this, that the Bruins, they were trying to find a winger to play with Krejci for what seemed like the last decade. And then they find one in Taylor Hall, sign him long-term, and then Krejci goes. So the demise of the Bruins is coming, and that's when the Atlantic Division will really open up. They still got Pasternak, still got McAvoy, some young talent, no doubt. But as Bergeron and Marchand get older, you're already starting to see the changing of the guard there in Boston. That'll be something to keep our eye on, especially when we're making our bets next year. And we got to let you know, today's episode of Locked On Senators is brought to you by BetOnline. It's the number one sports book here with the Locked On Podcast Network and the only place we trust for all of our action. Did you trust me last week when I gave you a Levy lock? There was no way the Blue Jays were going to lose their home opener back in Canada for the first time in 670 days. I was there at the game. Unbelievable atmosphere. And if you didn't learn your lesson from Friday, you could have made money off of them on Saturday, Sunday, probably again today. They are not losing in Canada. They're just not doing it. So go to BetOnline, and if you don't really trust me, why don't you just use your welcome bonus that you'll receive for going to BetOnline and opening an account? So here's how you do it. We'll take it step by step. Go to betonline.ag on your mobile device or on your desktop browser. When you do, create a new account for free, and then when you make your first deposit, just use our promo code. It's as simple as that. Locked On. In their little box, you'll see it. It says promo code. Put in Locked On. 50% of what you put in is just automatically right there. Bingo, bango, bongo. Put in $200. That's $100 right there for you to bet on the Toronto Blue Jays or whatever you want. But the key is that you have to win it to earn it. So it's free play money. Of course it is. They're not just going to give it away for free. They want you to get in the action, though. And that's what we want too. So don't sit on the sidelines. Get into the action. And don't forget to use our promo code Locked On to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, here is our SensCentral citizen. It's Rav. All right, we're now very pumped to get back to our favorite segment. It's our SensCentral citizen, and joining us today, we've got Rav at RavSens. You can go follow him there. This guy, he says it in his bio. His mood's dictated by the performance of the Ottawa Senators. We're super excited to welcome to the show. How's it going today, Rav?
Oh, so great, Levy. Great, really great to meet you and Pilsy. This is a huge honor for me. I feel like I've been drafted, like you're going to want to talk to my dad soon. This is a big deal for me. I've been following the show for so long, and it's a huge step. So I'm so excited to be here.
We've been, doing our background research on you. It sounds like you're good in the room. You've got great excitement. But what I want to do is go way back to the start of your Sens fandom. We know you're behind enemy lines as well. We're talking to you from Etobicoke. But how did you initially become an Ottawa Senators fan?
So, unlike probably a lot of the guys that listen to the show, I'm a little bit of an older vintage, right? So we got the team when I was in high school, towards the end of high school. So I remember the announcement. I remember the team going down to Florida to win the bid. Out of nowhere, us in Tampa Bay get it. So at that moment, you're a hockey fan, grow up playing hockey, and all of a sudden your hometown team gets the team, and you're obviously excited. And I remember vaguely now, that first preseason game. So not the first regular season game, but that first preseason game. No television coverage. I remember I had one of those old school dial radios. I don't know if it was TSN 1200 at the time, but one of the, whatever was the outlet, maybe it was 580 CFRA. I turned it on and I'm listening to this preseason game against the Hartford Whalers. Neil Brady scores our goal. We tie at 1-1, and I'm hooked from that moment on. Right, it's allegiance to I think I was an Oilers guy before that, and it all ended there. And it was since from there on in.
So, who you said you follow along since the early days? Who were some of your favorite players? Let's go from the early days, not Alfie, not those guys. Even before then, who are some of the guys when you're listening to on the radio that you're like, oh man, love this guy?
Yeah. So Pilsy, this is the thing. This is a big contention with me and a lot of the boys is that I don't I love, we can all name the Alfies, the Hosas, and the regular list of suspects, right? But I love the off the board guys. It's something that, I'm an off the board type of guy. So I've got my top 10 list, right? My top 10 list. Some of them are old school guys like I don't know if you remember Brad Marsh, right? You guys are probably too young for him, but Brad Marsh was a defenseman in our first couple of years. He was one of the last guys to not wear a bucket.
Nice.
He had a whole long historical career with the Flyers, with the Leafs, no bucket guy. So he's a guy that stands out right in my head as an old school guy that I really like. And then Dave, right? I'm a big Dave guy, and we could do a full 2 hours on why I'm a big Dave guy, but huge Dave guy as well.
So we need to ask why, because I'm sure some people listening are punching their steering wheels driving around at the memory of Alexandre Daigle. Like, what drew you to him? And we've got we'll get into your story about your wedding afterwards. But like Daigle, I mean, this guy is widely considered a bust. So what drew you to him?
You know what? I feel like he's a guy that's been dealt an unfair hand a little bit, right? So, if you look at my top 10 Sens of all time, a lot of the guys are guys that had something electrifying to them. They might not have been the full complete package. Most of them aren't, because they're off the board guys, but they're guys that could do something that could get you out of your seat. And no matter what anyone says, and I remember going back to the old Civic Center where Dave used to play. And the second that guy would break, like he'd get a couple of breakaways a game, the whole building would stand up. So you would notice that speed that he had was very distinct. And that's something that really attracted me to him, was how quick he was. And then if you look at the numbers, Ross, like the first year, 51 points, rookie season, playing with me on the wing, right? Like there's nobody on that team. 51 points. I think Brady just broke his goal record, right? Like as a rookie. So that's a rookie stat that stood up for a long period of time. And then he took time off. He went to Minnesota. He led that team in scoring when he came back, and Gaborik's on that team. So I think it's a very easy thing to shovel on top of Dagan saying he was a complete bust. But, you got to look for the silver lining every now and then, right?
I think that one reason why is the whole fact he said nobody remembers who goes number 2, and then it was Chris Pronger. Like that's a bit of a head scratcher.
That's what I was gonna say there. Like he was nice and he had some skills and he was good, but the thing is, I don't have too much sympathy for him when he's like, yeah, I'm number 1, not a big deal, I'm the best, and then it doesn't turn out for him. I think that's where it kind of fell off for me, but he took that confidence to his career after hockey. Isn't he a Hollywood producer now, or he does movies, I think? So he's definitely a confident guy.
True. And the thing is, right, Pilsy is that, at 18, right? At 18 making, I don't know what he was making then, like crazy amounts of money. I probably said a lot worse at 18.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to. That's fair.
But I think he's out in Montreal. He's a big production company. He's doing well. So happy for Dake. And look at what he did in the alumni game a few years ago. Remember on Parliament Hill? He dominated 4-goal game. I've been following him closely. So yeah.
I love that. Well, let's get into the story, because you, I think, are the only person in the entire world who wore an Alexandre Daigle jersey on your wedding. How did that come about?
Yeah. So first off, right, hats off to my beautiful wife so it's a bit of a story here, Ross, in the sense that, a few years ago, my work said, hey, we need a project done in the Caribbean. So we got to send you down to the Caribbean. You got to spend some time in Trinidad and Tobago.
Tough.
Perfect, man. I'm single, tough, beach. Let's do it. So I went down to Trinidad and Tobago, started working on the project. Lo and behold, you meet this beautiful woman, right? And Trinidad, they don't know anything about hockey. Cricket is the number 1 sport there. So she has no idea, but she quickly realizes, again, my mood depends. Why are you down today? The Sens lost. So my mood depends on how the Sens do. She kind of gets it like, okay, this guy's like an uber fan. So she becomes indoctrinated into this. And then, a year goes by, we're going to get married in Trinidad. So the boys come down from Ottawa to the wedding. And then, they're like, typical guys, right? Like they got us matching Daigle jerseys for, one of our wedding gifts. And we're up there doing our speech, and they're like, hey, put these on. It's like draft day again. So like my beautiful wife's wearing a beautiful dress. she had already surprised me with a Sens wedding cake. And again, this is in Trinidad and Tobago where no one even knows what hockey is. And they get us to put on these matching Dake jerseys. And I just think back to it and I'm like, what a incredible wife that I've got, that, you know, she's willing to do this. She realizes that I'm an Uber team. She's covering up her dress. And so, like, in Trinidad and Tobago, the Sens were prominently noted throughout our wedding. So hopefully we made a few fans down there. If we've got to open up a Locked On correspondence desk in Trinidad and Tobago, we've got a head start there.
That's awesome. Just growing the game, Rav. Just growing the game. I love it. So
I don't know if those cricket skills translate to hockey. I'm sure there's some good hand-eye coordination that's needed in both games. So.
Yeah, definitely a little. Yeah, I think that's fair. You're holding a stick, sort of a bat.
Exactly.
So what I would ask now, as you said, like you said, your wife had no idea about hockey, didn't know about the Sens. What's her fandom like now? Is she still kind of like, okay, Rav, you just do your thing, I'll go do something else, or has she gotten into the game a little?
She's in there. She's not probably like our level in terms of, like, she's not looking at depth charts. You know, maybe I waste a bit of time on stuff like that, but she's in there. So, like, her, you know, she's got her all-time list. Her number one player of all time is she loves Neil Dog. She's a Nealer girl, so that tells you a little bit about her personality.
That's a keeper for sure.
Exactly. So she loves Chris Neil. She loved him. She you know, what she used to say to me was, you know, you could tell that this guy, you know, he hated losing, eh? So you could see how you'd start to act up towards the end of a game when the team wasn't winning. What do you do to defend the team? She's like, this guy's got honor. And so Chris Neil was a big guy for her, for sure.
I love that. And hey, do we have the second coming of Chris Neil, maybe with a bit more offensive touch? And Tyler Boucher, what was your initial reaction when the Sens went off the board at 10?
The heart did skip a couple of beats. And you know what? Like, with what Troy's done the last few years, he's got like a bit of a free pass, right? Like, he could have drafted me and everyone would have said, well, you know, what's going on here? But like, you roll down the list, you start reading about him. Excellent. I think it's going to be great. You got Brady, you got Boucher coming in. It's going to be, you can almost see the fabric of the team and what we're going to look like in the next few years and how hard it's going to be to play against us in the playoffs. I think it's good. I think he had a rough year coming off of some significant injuries. So you hopefully that stuff is behind him. He got through the adversity and really looking forward to seeing what he can do. I think it's probably 2 or 3 years out. What do you guys think? Do you think he's going to do a year and maybe come in, or he's going to do a couple of years?
Personally, I think it'll be 2 or 3 years. Like, definitely you want to get him. He's going to Boston University, great place to be. Ask Brady Tkachuk what he thinks about that. So, like, that's fine for him to go there. And then I wouldn't even be that upset if Tyler Boucher spent a year in Belleville. Like, I think that would be a good kind of adjustment to play against men, see how that physicality works in a higher competition level. And I bet if he went to Belleville, he wouldn't stay there long. Like, I think he would impress everyone and get the call up pretty soon there.
And what I would say, too, on that note is that he's the kind of guy you want to add to this Senators team when they're already in playoff contention. He's the kind of guy that can push you over the top with his kind of rambunctious style. Like, he's a guy where if the team's rolling, sometimes you're nervous to add a different player into the mix. Are they going to throw off? He's the opposite. He's the kind of guy who whatever line he's going to go on, his teammates will love having him because he's going to go in hard on the forecheck, separate body from puck all the time, and create extra space for his line mates. So I'll say 2 years. I think he goes this year Boston University, next year Boston University, and I don't think he touches Belleville. I think he's the kind of guy, just like Jake Sanderson, where after the second year, he comes in and steps right into the NHL lineup. And wouldn't he be a perfect addition for a playoff push here in 2023? Like, I love the pick. We love the player even still. We just thought maybe there was some more talent left on the board. But as you said, man, those Mann brothers, they get a free pass on whatever way they want to go right now. And you see that even how many guys just shook their head when Tyler Klevin got picked. And now he looks like he's playing top 4 on Team USA. I don't know if you saw the clips. We got to shout out Everyday Sens for going through every game of that summer showcase. And Clevin is just dummying every single player who comes across the line. He's 6'4", huge frame. So I think that with the track record, it speaks for itself. So I'm like you, Rab. I'm fired up about that Tyler Boucher pick. But what do you think about the rest of the offseason so far? It seems like kind of a rebuilding move to get rid of Dadonov and not add, another talented player right now. Do you think the Senators are done? And if they are, how would you rate this offseason?
So I was super, on the Daddy move, I was super, super happy to offload that contract. I think it was definitely a tough year for Daddy. And I don't think any of us were disappointed when he was first signed, right? Like we were all thinking, this is good. This guy's got a proven offensive track record. He did great in Florida. My only issue here, and this is the small voice in my head, is we saved whatever $5 million, and I know we brought some salary back in with some of the free agents that we signed. My issue is that, are we going to spend that money, right? This is the thing, is like when we were thinking about moving him and hoping to move him, I was like, yeah, I definitely love to move him, but I'd love to be able to spend that money at the same time. Or is it just money you find in the couch and that goes right into the bank? I think that was my thinking. So I'm hoping we can still, I still, looking at that depth chart, right? I agree with Eugene. I think we do need a center iceman, maybe a right winger. So I'm hoping we can still make a little bit of a push here and put something down on the board. If not, that's fine too. I'm also really confident with the stable of young guys we have in the fold, and they could do some benefit with having some increased ice time as well. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And the thing, and I'll get your opinion on this, the thing that really made me start thinking is when they really shifted towards acquiring defensemen, right? Like you traded Dadonov, you get Holden in return, and then they signed Michael Del Zotto. So now you got two kind of bottom pair left shot defensemen. What's going to happen on the decor here, Rav? Like, do you think Victor Mete, the writing's on the wall and he's going to be sent out here? Obviously, they brought in two guys with size and more experience, and Victor Mete, that doesn't look too good for him. Or do you think maybe it's about time that DJ Smith takes a look at moving Brandstrom to the right side and opening up that left side? What do you think is going to happen with this decor?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've got shades of Braden Colburn still in my head, right? So, I'm going to be honest, I didn't follow Holden and Del Zotto this past year too closely. I think they're playing decent minutes. Holden was taxi squad for most of the year, but he did show up in the playoffs. And Del Z, I think, had some decent minutes, but they're older type defensemen, and I'm just not sure, right? So I'm still reluctant to make a move on Mete or Branny right away, just because I'm like, I don't know what we have with these two older guys. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. And I think the last piece is with, I know, Pilsy, you're a big Branny guy. I feel like we still haven't tested him out fully yet, right?
Yeah.
We haven't given him a clean shot. So I'm with you. Like, I'd love to see him get this being kind of the be all end all year for him. Like, he's got to separate. He's got to do something. I think Simmer says it best, right? Your buddy Simmer, where if you're a smallish guy, he's got to separate himself some way, right? You can see he's dynamic, but he hasn't separated himself that way. So I think this is a big year for him. And Mete came out really, really strong at the end of last year as well. I don't know what his contract situation is. I thought we were going to sign him like months ago.
Yeah, it seemed like it was him and Zub, right? The last headlines of the season on Sportsnet, they were saying, conversations are going great with Zub and Mete. Zub gets done the week after and still nothing on Victor Mete. So, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting itself. We should note on Nick Holden, you mentioned he showed up for the playoffs. Only William Nylander on the Leafs had more points than Nick Holden, 7. And although Nick Holden got past the first round of the playoffs, which none of the Leafs can say there. But, yeah, I'm with you on Brandstrom, and I think that it was great for his confidence that Shabbat got hurt at the end of the year so he could play top power play and get those 20-plus minute games that had evaded him throughout the first half of the season. That's the only thing I hated about Brandstrom's development this season, is when he would play 7 minutes in a game. And you're like, why are you dressing him when he could be in Belleville playing 25 minutes in all situations? And he showed he was too good for Belleville. What do you have, 5 assists in 4 games and was dominant in that little stretch he was down there. But he was a healthy scratch at times, and that's just not good for anybody. So let's see if that figures itself out.
That's the tricky part. I just at the end of it, if you're going to ask me here, right, I just don't think he's a DJ guy. And I think that's going to be a tough thing. And, Sandy's going to come in partway through the year as well. It's just, there's not too much real estate left on the decor, right? And I don't know, and you still got Lassie down. You think Lassie does a full year down in Belleville, or does he make his way up at some point?
Well, Pilsy and I had the conversation about that right when we were kind of analyzing Belleville's season and what happened to the Tom Bomb. Like we were so anticipated for him just wiring clappers on the power play. And I think he had one goal last year, 2 goals. Like I need to get him back to the WHL days when he put up 18 or 19 tucks and was just dominant on the power play. He needs that as his separating tool because he's decent two-way, but I think he might need two more years down there. I think that JBD is going to pass him this year on the depth chart. I think they'll both start in Belleville as right shot D. And if I'm Troy Mann, I'm probably leaning towards JBD in the tougher situations.
No, fair enough. JBD, acquitted him really well, right? At the end of the year, he was very, very solid. They eased him in. He could definitely use some time in Belleville, and it was great that he had that last minute stint in the World Championships as well. That's I'm sure it's a place where he learned a ton watching the other guys and participating. So only upside here on the decor. Here. These are good problems to have, right? These are good problems.
Exactly.
Like, I remember a few years ago, we couldn't even have a conversation this long about our decor. So.
Where's Johnny Oduya going to play? How are we going to fit him into this system?
Johnny Tyconic, right?
Oh,
still,
my God.
Soft spot in my heart just with the name, like Johnny Tyconic.
Yeah. Hey, I don't think his story's over yet.
His roller coaster Tyconic is not over just yet.
Yeah. I think there's still some potential there.
So do I. And I think it says a lot about his character, just trying to, getting out and Nodak and putting himself in a good spot shows some great maturity. And he had a good year last year, from what I understand.
Yeah, I thought so too. So now a final question for me, Rav. And speaking about JBD, let's take a look at his Nodak partner that came up to the Senators with him in Shane Pinto. What do you think is going to happen with Pinto here? Like, do you think the Senators general manager, Pierre Dorion, is sitting there going, we cannot have Pinto as our number 2 center next year. We need to upgrade. We need to find someone to allow him to go down in the lineup. Or is he saying, you know what? We brought Pinto up quick. He played well, but let's get him in Belleville. Let's surround him with all these veterans that we've just signed, guys like Agazino, Pontus Aberg, all these really good goal-scoring, talented, experienced wingers. Get him in Belleville for a while and then bring him up? Or do you think he starts the season in the NHL, or do you think he starts the season in the AHL? I guess is my real question here.
Yeah, it's a good one. Pilsy. I think, the big thing is I still feel like we've got a hole, right? So Josh has solidified himself as a 1A, 1B type of guy. No questions there. It's that second spot. This is where the Logan Brown, experiment and project over these past few years, you would have wished it generated a little bit more fruit, because this would have been his job, right, with his tenure. And it's just unfortunate that it's not fully baked as yet. And then you've got, Pinto, Paul, and White. I put Paul in that center conversation just because I feel like, we're still a little bit thin there if the 2 Pierres aren't able to make another deal and bring someone in. So, my thoughts on Pinto was, from what we saw last year, there was a lot of conversation around this guy should never see Belleville, right? And we could see that in his 200-foot game, all-round game. The offensive touches, it was not a big enough sample size for us to see could he really do anything. So I feel like a little bit of time in Belleville wouldn't hurt, specifically focusing in on the power play, getting some offensive touches and using that coming back in. But he's one of those guys that I definitely like to see what camp dictates. Yeah. Let's see what he does in camp. Let's see that confidence, but I definitely want to see him evolve over that, just, that 200-foot game, that defensive presence, but also being able to chip in offensively. If he could do that, then I have no hesitation keeping him up.
One thing where he's got an advantage is that he's a right shot centerman, and the Sens don't have many of those. Like Colin White, yeah, he's a right shot, but I mean, I'm of the mind that Nick Paul should take his spot in the middle of the ice and push him over to right wing, especially with Dadonov's spot opening up on that side. But otherwise, like Chris Tierney's a left shot. You've got Logan Brown's a left shot as well. So from that standpoint, I think it would be good to have a little mix of lefty-righty in the faceoff circle. And we know that's what Pinto was so well known for at Nodak, and then he struggled in the NHL. And that's no surprise. He's playing against guys. He's going up in the faceoff dot against guys who are so much more experienced than he's used to. I think he's matched up against Jay Beagle in Vancouver against one of his first games, a guy who's been winning faceoffs for the last decade in the National Hockey League. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't mind a little extra offensive situational game for Pinto, but man, he just showed that he can play at the NHL level. So I'm kind of leaning towards seeing what he can do in a situation like he was in last year, playing with good players. I don't want him to be there on the fourth line playing with Austin Watson. I think that there's better guys for that role. But if you don't get a guy who can fill the spot between Stützle and Connor Brown, I think they should just roll it in. Like, this is a team that went 10-3-1 to close the season. I don't know why you tinker that much with what they have. Now, bring in depth like they have for sure, because you never know how many D you'll need and all that. But I would kind of run it back a little bit and say, hey, we're playing in a tough division going up against teams fighting for their playoff lives. And they were doing pretty damn well against, especially those games against Montreal down the stretch, who ended up winning the division at the end of the day. So I would love to see Pinto be a part of this team going forward. But on that note, my final question, Rav, super simple. Playoffs or no for next season?
It's a tough one, right? So we're going out of that. What was that? All
you know what? I'll simplify it for you a little bit, Rav. Let's say, will they be playing meaningful games in the last 10? Like, coming down the stretch, are they going to be a hot streak away from sneaking in? I think that's probably a more fair question than to exclaim, yes, this is a playoff team.
Yeah, you know what? It all comes down to, like, I feel like from the defense out, we are a playoff team. I feel like we can scrape in. I love the character, on our forward lines and on our D-core. My issue is just in goal, and I know this is a goaltending friendly show, so I want to tread carefully here. But it comes down to what Matt's going to be able to do. We need him to just. It can't be the I'm good for 2 games. I'm okay for 1 game. I get injured. That whole thing it can't happen. It really can't happen. So I think we're going to have a good indication over the first kind of 6 weeks how Matt looks and how the backups do, how the backup does, and then go from there. It's such a sad response. I hate saying that, but it's really going to come down to goaltending. It's such a cliche, right? Like cliche response, but.
No, I'm with you. Like, the goaltending is going to be massive. And personally, I'm trying to be optimistic, and I really think Matt Murray can bounce back if he can be healthy. Like you said, it's hard to stay consistent when you don't have a chance to play in a bunch of games at a full level of health where you're comfortable. So I think that was really struggling with Matt Murray. Now, just quickly, do you think Anton Forsberg will be the backup for the entire season, or do you think with the stretch Philip Gustafsson had at the end of the season there that he might be able to sneak in and take over that spot?
Yeah, I think the Forsberg move, like, that was probably like one of the below the radar moves last year. That was one of the smartest moves we made, right? Like, it just is like a total good insurance policy. Like it creates that buffer for us. I think, and to be honest, like Gustafsson, Pilsy, you wouldn't have asked me about Gustafsson last year, right? Like, he was almost basically a write-off. So I think there's some maturity there with Philip just over this past year, and I feel like it's between. And the thing is, with what Sogard did, right? I want to introduce him into this conversation or into that question, if you don't mind, right? Like, I think that I want to put let's put Forsberg in the backup slot, just given his tenure and his experience. But I want to see what Gustafsson and Max do in terms of how they separate each other. They're a couple of years apart in terms of age, and I feel like, this is an opportunity where maybe Max kind of throws his name in the hat a little bit in terms of who's going to get that number 3 spot, and push for the backup spot up on the big team.
This is a guy who's never lost a game in pro hockey, so that's something he can definitely hang his hat on. Rav, we absolutely love chatting with you, and we're looking forward to doing this in person, hopefully at the Sens home opener, and knock on wood, fans will be able to be in attendance, and can't wait to have a beer with you at the CTC, man, or behind enemy lines. We know the season starts in Toronto, and it's always a pleasure to, know that there's more reinforcements here in the heart of enemy territory than just me. So thanks so much for being a SensCentral citizen, man. Really appreciate it.
I loved it, guys. I loved it. And thanks so much for all the work that you guys did. During the pandemic, no hockey, times were tough mentally for people like me and other lockdown fans. And you guys grinded show after show after show. I don't know how you did it with no hockey on. And can't thank you enough for what you've done for the community. This has been an honor and a pleasure. Loved it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Rav.
All right, Pillsy. Stick taps to Rav for joining us as our SensCentral citizen. We're going to do our best here since we're going down to 3 shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, until September, where we're hoping there's going to be a rookie camp before Sens hit the ice for training camp. We're going to try to do every Monday a SensCentral citizen. So if you want to be featured, we've got a few in line already, but let us know. Shoot us a DM at SensCentral, where we hope you're following along on Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram, lockedon.senators. But most importantly, go give us a try on YouTube, because it's new for us as well. And we would like to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark as soon as possible, Pillsy. Maybe a little giveaway once we hit that mark. We haven't done that in a while, but we do give away every show. It's Pillsy's pick of the day. Pillsy, tell us about our friends over at Built Bar.
Man, Built Bar keeps the good news coming, guys. There's so many different amazing flavors to choose from. I'm a huge Built Bar guy. I have one like every day, and not just the protein bars. You got to try out their mixed drinks. There's Built Bites. There's Built Broth. There's so much to have, but let's stick on the protein bars because they're the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. I love all these flavors, honestly. Built Bar is great for the health-conscious guy or girl. You can lose or maintain weight while indulging in a delicious treat. The bars are low calorie, low sugar. And then on the flip side, high protein, high fiber. You gotta love it. They're always covered in 100% chocolate. They're soft, they're easy to chew. But how are you gonna decide what flavor you're gonna have? That's where I come in. I'm the expert for Built Bars. Look at that mixed box that Ross has. All those beautiful flavors available. Let's narrow it down. I'm looking at toffee almond today. You get almonds. You get all that protein. It's packed with protein. 19 grams of it. And Ross, you're looking into your bar mix box right now. Do you got a toffee almond with you?
I'm looking for it right now, Pillsy.
You might have already eaten it.
I definitely have. I've got salted caramel, though, so we'll add that to the mix. Very similar, for sure.
That is a good one. Very similar flavor, but the toffee almond, you get 19 grams of protein, 5 grams of sugar, only 160 calories. That is the Built Bar way. Now, Ross mentioned we're giving away Built Bars. We pretty much are, because we got you guys hooked up with a sweet promo code. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and the best way to get it is go to BuiltBar.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. One more time, guys, BuiltBar.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 and we're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. It's Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
All right, Pillsy, before we take off for the day, we got to touch on the World Junior Summer Showcase. Now, the Sens had 4 prospects involved. It was a tournament that involved 2 Team USAs, 1 Team Blue, 1 Team White, Team Finland, and Team Sweden. No Swedes this year, so don't worry about them. But on Finland, we got to start goalie-friendly show. Levi Marilainen, and Lucky Levi does not let in goals. It's absolutely incredible. Not only was he making highlight reel save after highlight reel save all tournament long, finishing with a save percentage over .930 in 120 minutes. So in about, just over 2 games that he ended up playing. I'm just incredibly impressed by his poise in the net. It seems like he's reading plays so well. Now, he's not the quickest goalie, and maybe that's a good thing because you can add speed as you get stronger, and he's put on 15 pounds. But the way he can read and react to cross-seam passes is truly incredible. How much did he impress you? And shout out to Everyday Sens, too. This guy was posting clips left, right, and center.
Yeah, I was just going to do that. I'll echo that statement. Shout out to Everyday Sens. That's how I've been following along. He does a great job. So got to go follow that account if you haven't already. Big time Sens fan, and he's getting you the content that you need. And you talked about Lucky Levi, Ross. I think the best thing about him is his consistency. Like, can you think of a bad game he's had?
No.
I honestly can't. And again, we can only follow him so closely when he's playing over in Finland. But Sens Prospect, another great account you got to follow if you don't already, was tracking him closely. And it just seemed every single post was like, Levi Merlainen win, 28 out of 30 shots saved, like only 2 goals allowed. That team keeps winning. And what I like is, you mentioned, he's able to read the play really well. Everyday Sens posted a clip of him totally bailing out his defenseman that had a brutal turnover that leads to an amazing chance. And Levi, calm, poised, gets in position, hard wrist shot right in the slot, good scoring opportunity, smothered, done. Not a problem at all.
Are we allowed to say that the guy who gave that puck away was the one who everyone said it was such a steal because they drafted him, Topi Niemela, when Ottawa traded up to get Tyler Clevin? So oopsie daisies on that giveaway there. But Levi, like I mentioned, it was actually 137 minutes that he played, 932 save percentage, 2-0. And that's just the thing. I think he has, 2 losses this whole year? He just doesn't lose games. And to me, I'm not going to really go out on a limb here by saying that's pretty important for a goalie.
Great stats as always, Ross. You get the best stats on this show. And I think the Athletic, Corey Pronman, did a good write-up on all the players that had good showcases. And he talked about Levi Merlainen. And I think a little while ago, Ross, we would have considered Levi Merlainen to be maybe the 3rd goalie on that team. But with Joel Blomqvist, who was ironically the Pittsburgh pick when they traded for Matt Murray and they selected Blomqvist with that pick, he's the number 1 guy. But now Corey Pronman's saying that right now Levi Merlainen has at least made it a competition. Like, it's no longer in stone that Blomqvist is going to be the number 1 goalie. He's got a competition. And man, if you're looking at stats and consistency, like I could see a situation where Blomqvist is the starting goalie. He has a rough first game. Levi comes in and that's it. You know, how many times do we see that on Team Canada? The higher profile goalie gets the start, can't handle the pressure or doesn't have a good game to start it off. The lesser known backup comes in and just shuts the door and he takes them all the way. I could see Levi Merlainen having that kind of World Juniors, and I would be all for that.
Scouts are going to be all over his games next year, though, because he's playing with projected 1st overall pick Shane Wright on a stacked Kingston Frontenac's team. So I don't think he's going to fly under the radar like he was in the Finnish junior circuit, where only Pilsy can get out there to do his scouting. But hey, we're really excited, and we're going to have boots on the ground next year for all of Kingston's games in Owen Sound and Guelph. Pilsy's going to make sure of that, and I got the guys out west on lock. But let's stick with the guys who are in the World Junior Summer Showcase. Let's save best for last. So let's go from Levi Merlainen, who was unranked on every single prospect expert's board going into the draft, to another guy who was the same but ended up being a 2nd round pick. Tyler Clevin was making his presence known on every single shift. And the real concern that all these draft experts had with his game was his puck control and his decision making. I saw a few end-to-end rushes, one of which where he absolutely linebacker just went right through one of the Finnish defenders at the offensive blue line, and then they almost scored off that same play, but leave it to the Leafs prospect not to be able to finish it off on time. But this guy just impresses me every shift, and Corey Pronman goes from not having him in his top 122 before the 2020 draft, and then at the end of the article you referenced, he has his projected Team USA, and he's the 2nd left defender, a top 4 guy behind only Jake Sanderson. That's earning a bit of respect in a short period of time.
Oh yeah, put some respect on the K-Train's name, that's for sure. And look, say what you want, but I think this is just another piece of proof of how effective Nodak's development is, and specifically on the defensive side. Like Brad Berry, that's his thing, right? He's a defense guru, and it goes to show, you talked about it. The scouts, the biggest thing they're worried about was the decision making from Tyler Clevin. He can give up turnovers. He's not able to skate the puck up the ice. There's no offensive ability. Well, it seems like at Nodak, he's honed all those skills and he's been able to do that. And that play that you referenced, I love that because he skates the puck up the ice and then passes it off. And normally when a defenseman would do that, they would hit the brakes and kind of settle back and try to watch where the play's going and then take a second to be like, okay, the play's shifting here. Where do I need to be right now? Not Tyler Clevin. He's like, I passed the puck. There's a guy in front of me. I'm going to run him over, and then I'll think about what I got to do. So it's more a hit first, think later, which sometimes might get him into trouble. But what I think is it's going to do is, man, and think about him with the other Tyler Boucher, is it makes those teams hesitate. Like now that player, I don't know who the guy was who he ran over, but that player, next time Tyler Clevin brings the puck up ice, I guarantee you his gap control on Tyler Clevin is not going to be as aggressive. No. He's going to sit back a little and say, maybe I'll give this 6'4", 200-plus pound defenseman a little more room if he wants it. I don't want to get knocked on my ass again.
He's just a straight-up presence out there, Pilsy. Like, you notice him every shift, and his development is far from over. So don't get us wrong. He's not stepping into the NHL this year by any means, but I think it can't be understated how much working alongside Jake Sanderson is helping his game because he gets to watch the best defenseman. I'm going to call him the best defensive prospect outside the NHL right now. And I'm going to say that confidently because if you watched any of this World Junior Summer Showcase, everyone knew how good his gap control was, how smooth of a skater he is. Just watch his dad skate back in the day. Like, he's got shades of that. Unbelievable skater, great hockey sense, but don't let him turn up his offensive side of the game. This guy was creating offense through spinoramas at the offensive blue line, little shake shimmies to lose off checkers. He is adding an all-around package that, you know how he was compared to Ryan McDonough? I'm seeing that more and more every single time I watch him. The ability to control the pace of the game. Now, Ryan McDonough would be a great height for him to hit, but do you remember what Craig Button compared his skating to before we even saw him at Nodak? Why don't you let everyone know? Scott Niedermayer. Could you imagine if he becomes 2/3 of the player that Scott Niedermayer was? But you can see the template of that same smooth skate. It looks like he's playing in a rocking chair. Like, everything is just so smooth out there, and it's truly incredible to watch, man. Like Sanderson, Corey Pronman doubles down to, don't give us that BS that we've got our Sens goggles on. Corey Pronman called him by far the best defenseman on the ice, said it wasn't even close.
Yeah, and I believe it. And that's where Jake Sanderson's striving to be, right? Like, he puts in the work. This guy goes to bed at 8:30 as a college kid. Like, he's making the sacrifices to make sure that he has the proper rest. He can develop properly. He can train properly. Like, he has his sights on being one of the best defensemen in the NHL. And I think if he can stay consistent, and what we've seen from the summer showcase at this age and at this part of his development stage, I don't see why he can't be one of the best top pair defensemen in the league with his skill set. Like, I'm so excited to see what Jake Sanderson brings. And for sure, when Nodak is done this season, he's coming to Ottawa, and we're going to get to see that. And that's going to be incredible to see, because once Sanderson is up there, then the decor is really starting to flex its might.
It changes everything.
It changes everything. Like, right now, people probably looking at the Sens decor on paper around the league are like, wow, that's a joke. That's a joke. But when you get a guy like Sanderson in there, and then if they can find a partner for Shabbat, or JBD ends up projecting to be that guy, like, this could be the makings of a solid decor. So I'm just so excited for what Jake Sanderson has to bring. And I think, Ross, now we can go to the final player of the summer showcase who we haven't touched on yet, and that's Tyler Boucher. Like, I think he really did.
Let me just rattle off Jake Sanderson's numbers first. 5 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 18 shots on goal, Pilsy. That's what I mean by creating offense. But you're right. Yeah, lead us in, Tyler Boucher, the Tasmanian devil out there, just hitting absolutely everything.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Tyler Boucher, similar to Tyler Clevin. Like, imagine those two on the ice together. Like, you're not safe out there when the Tylers are on the ice if you're the other team. So I loved what Tyler Boucher brought. He had a goal and an assist. Like, he showed that he has that boost of offense. And I just, like, we've talked about the goal and we don't need to go over it again, but his awareness to be able to fight in front of the net, locate where the puck is, time his push off the defender perfectly to get into open space and then release that puck as soon as it hits a stick. Like, that maybe seems like a simple hockey play, but your timing has to be perfect everywhere. Your awareness to see the guy can make the play, your timing to push off the defenseman and to get in the right position to get that shot off. And then you got to beat the goalie too. Like, there's like six decisions you have to make in a 3-second span, that if you mess one of those things up, that's not a goal. It's sure, it might be a good offensive chance, but you're not scoring on that play. So that's the kind of hockey IQ that Tyler has. When he's put in the position to succeed, he's going to make sure he gives himself the best chance. And that's what he showed out there with that goal.
Unbelievable tournament, I thought, for him, coming off a year where he didn't play very much. He was not on Corey Prodman's initial projected team, but I'm not worried about that. I think if he goes and has a good start at Boston University, he's going to work his way onto this team. And I don't even think it's going to be a very tight competition down the stretch. So long as he comes out and plays well at BU, I think that's going to be very important in all this as well. But it's just great to see the Sens have such a presence at this tournament, and guys just looked great. So one more note before we go, and we'll stick with the BU theme. Former Boston University Terrier Jack Eichel, his agents, like, this is getting messy. And we do a Senators podcast. We've seen divorces before, and this goes way back to before this podcast started. But just in recent memory, Mike Hoffman, Erik Karlsson, Matt Duchene, Mark Stone. Did I miss anybody?
Joe
Borowiecki thought he was going to get a new contract.
Yeah, Senator for life from the owner.
Yep. So that being said, none of it ever got to the point we're at where it's like a medical issue now. They're just not letting him get a surgery. And now it's going to, if he got the surgery, he would have been ready for next season. But now they're just holding on to him, not letting him get it. And now they're kind of screwing him for next year if he gets dealt. And they're screwing themselves too, because the less he can play next year, well, the less value he has. So this is just very messy. Eichel's agents put out a very damning letter, let's put it that way, because Kevin Adams, and I don't really blame him, and poor guy, he was just kind of thrown into this, right? A guy who was just named GM less than a year ago, but the damage had been long done before then. I think it's more of an ownership Eichel issue in Buffalo, but he came out and was like, oh, we wouldn't have any trouble if he's on the camp roster. And then his agents are like, nuh-uh, no chance. When do you think this could be solved?
It's tough to say, because you're right. This reeks of desperation right now. And the problem is the agents are trying to do the best for Jack, but they might have kind of screwed him in a little bit of a way that they've now took away a bit. We talked about leverage with Victor Mete. They've now taken away a big chunk of leverage for the Buffalo Sabres, because now that they've gone public with this, teams that are calling, and there's teams like there's reports that the Wild, the Ducks, just the Rangers have just stopped talking. Flames, yeah.
I think the Flames are a good spot for him to go. And remember, he can't pick his location. Just imagine if they had him and Johnny Gaudreau on the same line. Like, there was a great edit someone did. I kind of want to give it credit, but I can't find it right in front of me right now. But where they edited a pass from Gaudreau, a cross-seam pass with a goal from Eichel, and it just looked like one strict motion. It was pretty impressive.
Nice. Yeah, that is cool. But like what I was saying, like the leverage, they're taking it away, because now those teams, the reports are that they just stopped calling Buffalo, because they're like, you guys are out of your minds with what you're asking. Like, we're not doing that. So the conversation has just died up. And now the agents have put this out there. Teams are, I bet you, the second they saw that the agents post this, they called back and were like, seems like Jack Eichel's desperate to get out of there. And you said you were comfortable having him in training camp and playing him for the season. I don't think Jack wants that. So how about, instead of the first round pick and our top prospect, you can have a second round pick and our second best prospect, because we know you don't have the leverage anymore. Jack Eichel is not going to come to camp and put on a smile and play for you. Hell, he might not even be healthy enough to do that. So all the leverage that Buffalo's been holding and hoarding and trying to hold on to is slipping away from their fingertips, because the agent said it. They were expecting a trade before free agency. That was a week ago. Yep. We're talking about now, they've got to be scrambling to get something done. And Buffalo, they don't have any more marquee guys to trade. they've done the teardown. It's just Jack Eichel now. So they need to hit a home run with this, but they've lost their leverage with the agents being just sick and tired of this. So I think it's going to affect Jack Eichel for sure. And I know I kind of goofed. I forgot his no move trade clause doesn't start till next year. But also keep in mind, next year, he's got a $7.5 million signing bonus due. So maybe there's some teams that, I don't care. That's water off a duck's back, right? Like, that's not really a big deal. But then other teams, like if you're the Ottawa Senators, that's a deal breaker right away. They don't got $7.5 million cash just to fork over to a new player. And there's some other teams in that same scenario. So there's definitely a lot of intrigue going into how Jack Eichel can be traded. And I think it's got to happen soon. Like if it goes to September, I'll be absolutely shocked. And then if it comes to training camp, I think we're going to see an Erik Karlsson type deal where like he barely even gets to training camp and they're like, okay, we need to get him out of here because it's causing a problem for the rest of the team, right? So I think if it gets all the way to training camp, he's not doing the charity golf event. He's getting out of there ASAP.
The fact they had that charity golf tournament at Karlsson's home course, the Royal Ottawa, just adds such an element to it. And he apparently, Mike McKenna told this story on Chicklets where he was just like, yeah, Karlsson like showed up, just hit a bunch of balls on the putting green and then left.
I don't blame him. Yeah, that's awkward as hell.
Yeah, super awkward. Anyways, it's getting even more awkward in Buffalo with Eichel. We'll be there every step of the way as we figure out where Eichel's going, what's Mete going to make, and are the Sens done constructing this roster? I don't think so. But what I do know is we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Senators. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. Hope you enjoyed the new look, the YouTube. So if you haven't, go check it out. Subscribe as well. You can see my Built Bar mixed box on today's show. And this, we're going to start pretty simple with the YouTube coverage, and then we're going to try to ramp it up getting in to next season. So exciting times ahead, no doubt. We also want to thank Rav and wish him a happy birthday. It's his birthday tomorrow. So that's awesome for Rav. And then it might or might not, cannot confirm or deny that I'm turning a year older on Wednesday, but we'll talk to you on Wednesday and we'll see you there. But for today, we say goodbye. Hope you have a great day. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.